I'll just open with karakia. Whakatauki tahau ki te uru, whakatauki tahau ki te tonga, kia ma kina kina ki uta, kia ma tara tara ki tai, e he ake an ate atakura, he hio, he huka, he hohu, tihei, Māori ora. Ki te mihi, ki te whare, ka hui ariki, e tēnei wā pōri, e te kingi tuheitia, te tumu heringa waka o te ao Māori. Moi mai, moi mai, moi mai rā. Ka huri nā mihi ki te mana whenua nā iwi e te rohe ne, rangatira mā, tēnā koutou. I acknowledge the bereaved Royal House of Te Hutia at this time of sadness. King Te Hutia, highly respected leader and mainstay of the Māori world, sleep now, rest now, be at peace. I turn my acknowledgements to the Indigenous peoples of the land and area, esteemed ones, descendants of chiefs, I greet you. I'd now like you to stand for a moment's silence. Thank you. I'd also like to acknowledge the new Māori Queen, Nā Wai Hono e te pō paki. Right, we'll now move on with the body of the meeting. We have apologies from Councillor Murray. Everyone else is in attendance. And since someone please move the apologies be accepted. Move Councillor Hill, seconded Councillor Dowler. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. We'll now move to the public forum. So we have 4 speakers registered for the public forum, and I'll take them in order in which they were received. So firstly, we have Eugene speaking on behalf of Ngāti Kuia. Just switch your microphone. That's all good.
Ato, tēnā koutou. I ngā mate o te tau o te marama o te rānei, king tū, haere atu rā. Ki te kanuhi ora, i ngā rangatira mā, ki ngā whānau, ki ngā rangatira o te tau ihu, tēnā koutou katoa. Ko Eugene whakahoihoi tōku ingoa, he tūmi toihau o te runanga Ngāti Kuia, tēnā koutou katoa. Ko tai mai nei ki te tautoko te kaupapa o te Māori Ward. For myself, like today is both a sad day. It's a disappointing day because of the decisions that you have to make. Terrible decisions, given what we're going through at the moment with the loss of our kingitanga, but also the movement and our travel that we've made as Māori, as people in this area over the last few years, almost like a backstep. I'd like to talk about the backdrop of the decisions that you're making, and I'll be brief. Essentially, you've been forced to make unpleasant decisions. Okay, so karoha o kia koutou. You've been forced to make decisions, and on the backdrop of other decisions that have been made from the central government, a whole litany of stuff which is detrimental to Māori, to our people in general. Heartfelt, the loss and disestablishment of Te Ako Whaiora, the relentless pursuit of our health systems, changes to smoking legislation, 7AA, many kaupapa, which is disappointing to see, which is impacting, but probably the most significant for me is being forced into a position where you've been forced to surrender your rights and obligations as councillors, as elected members of this rohe. Okay, forced down the track, which will only lead to more disappointment, regardless of the outcome today as we move forward. So difficult times for all. I just want to just mihi the fact that it is unpleasant, that your hand has been forced in many ways, okay, and there was just more difficulty. So I'd just like to present because for myself and as representative of Ngāti Koe, and I'd say for Māori katoa ki tēnei rohe, that the problems we're trying to solve through these decisions are probably poorly understood. So I'd like to take this time to actually frame some problem sets that you could use to reconcile, to consider in retaining and establishing Māori wards. And I think if we go back to the instruments that New Zealand is founded upon, and that is honouring Te Tiriti o Waitangi. And if we look and reflect upon those principles, and I think there's two relevant ones here. Firstly, it's the partnership as hapu hapu Māori, te iwi Māori, partners with the Crown. So Māori wards provide a mechanism of which to do this, to provide our voice to the spaces and places that are important, to the decisions that are important to us. The other part is participation. And we know just through years and years of making important decisions on behalf of other people, that when we don't have those voices included in our decisions, the majority of those decisions are poor and end with poor outcomes for our people and for our rohe in general. So I believe that returning and establishing the Māori Ward provides an opportunity to resolve and actually give effect to honouring Te Tiriti o Waitangi. You also have legal obligations under various acts, local government, electoral acts, for example, which requires councils to provide opportunities for Māori in decision making. So you've already got a mechanism in the form of a ward to support you to do better in your decision making, to fulfil your obligations both as a Te Tiriti partner, but also as part of your legal obligations as councillors, as elected officials. The last part, and I'll try to bundle this up into a single kaupapa, and that is, we know, and history tells us, that Māori have been underrepresented at decision tables across many boards, across many organisations. Our voice is not heard. This provides you the opportunity to contribute to the resolution of that problem. The other part of this is, it's not only about the seat, it's also about the person, providing us with the opportunity to elect the person with the right skills, knowledge and attitude to lead and make decisions that are important to us in the spaces and places that are relevant to ngā iwi or te tauihu, here, now, and into the future. We have massive expectations of not only the person that will hopefully take that seat, but also expectations of what the seat means to all of our people, as we've seen. The collective aspirations that's been listed in the partnership agreement can be furthered. We can take that further than we dreamed. But we need the right mechanisms and we need the right people in place to make this a reality. So for the councillors, and to inform your decision, kia kaha, kia toa, kia manawa nui. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. Pāpiti hono tātou hunga, te hunga mate, ki te hunga mate, pāpiti hono tātou hunga. Hunga ora ki te hunga ora. Tēnā tātou katoa.
Got it, Eugene. Next up, we have Peter Cantler. Peter?
Thanks, Tim. Thanks, councillors, and thanks for the opportunity to be here to talk about this item, because I think it's quite significant, and certainly to our community. We didn't have that choice before when the council went ahead and voted for the start of Māori wards, and so I thank you very much for having that choice to do that now.
On the invite, so
So
Karen wrote it down. What's the number?
stop the clock.
So, yeah, that's all right, Peter. I'll cut you 30 seconds slack.
Yeah, right. Okay. Yep. Look, and I really don't envy you guys one little bit. Either way today, you're going to have egg on your face. But I do believe that you've just got to get away from the ideology and just vote on what you believe is the right thing to do. Now, I know that with the past decision, when you didn't have to make that decision, but you made the decision, and you probably made it with admirable causes. But our community out there certainly felt that they were treated with a bit of contempt because they didn't get the right to vote there, have their piece of democracy to vote on whether Māori wards were a good thing or not. Now, I want to start with a meaning of a word, and then I'll give you the word. And that meaning is separate segregation, a system of keeping groups of people separate and treating them differently. The word is apartheid. And I feel that what we're doing here is we're going down a slippery slope when you create a ward that's based on race or birthright as opposed to being open for everybody. And that to me is why I'm here. I don't want to be here. I would have thought I had better things to be doing, but nothing is better than coming here. I don't want my grandkids, my mokapuna, to say, Dad or Granddad, how did this happen? How come there's one set of systems or rights for one group and not for the other? And so I think it is my duty to my mokapuna. I want to go right back to the 1820s, 1830s, 1840s, when a lot of people were leaving England. They were coming out here, and a lot of them were trying to escape that system of hierarchy, that system of lords that was brought about by birthrights. And they've come out here, and I can't believe here we are in 2024, all of a sudden trying to create another system that's created around birthright. To me, I find that absolutely abhorrent, and I think our forebears would be certainly appalled by it as well. We go on to, let's look at the principles of the treaty, and I heard Eugene say it, and I certainly agree. Some of the principles of the treaty are fantastic. We've got kawanatanga, the governing of Aotearoa, New Zealand by the Crown, Tino Rangatiratanga, the right for them to govern their own customs, cultures as well. But the one I love is the Oretetanga, Maori having equal rights and citizens of New Zealand. This one is the most crucial, and it's in Article 3, having equal rights as every other non-Māori in New Zealand. And I want to uphold that. What that means is Māori don't have any lesser rights. But conversely, it also means they should have no greater rights as well. They should be equal. And what we're doing here, by creating a ward specifically based on race, birthright, whatever it is actually, to me, is against the principles of that treaty. How are we going to? I've got a minute. Oh, okay. But now Eugene mentioned about partnership and participation. You guys are already doing that. We have Renee here. I think that you second certain iwi onto your committees. That is the way to do it, rather than to have a Māori-based board, but to actually second them onto those committees. You get the skilled person that you want. And I think that stops the division as well. What's happened is here, we've thrown a huge rock into the pool of division, and it's only getting better. I don't envy you with your decision. If you are going to go ahead with establishing a Māori ward, I think that it's quite critical then that I think there should be a ward for farmers as well. No one has contributed more to the growth of Aotearoa, New Zealand, than the farmers. And I certainly think if you're going to do that, well, let's go down that ward of Māoris as well. But yeah, give me a second. Oh, man, I had that. Can't I have 10 minutes? No, no,
30 seconds.
30 seconds. Okay, I would also like to think that this is quite critical to our community. They need to know where we stand, and I know amongst my people, I report not at the fact that but it's about the ward, it's about the race-based thing. So I'd certainly like to think that there's a division code. If there is, I'd like one councillor at least to put up and say we'd like a division code, because I think our community needs to know, do we stand up for apartheid or do we stand up for democracy? They never had that choice on democracy. And I think that democracy is the best thing, and it's the thing that is most worth fighting for. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Peter.
I know you'll vote with conscience.
And
Okay.
your time is done, even with my extension. So next up we have Maxwell Clark.
Bring out the winery you bought, my eyes are a bit red. I'm sorry about that. I've actually got cataracts and I've just had surgery. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I'd like to acknowledge the good folks here for being here. I have a slightly differing view and I'd like it to be considered. I'm my whānau are of Māori descent, so I want to put that out there. I've got some very strong family members who would like me to speak on their behalf here today. They're strong, young, modern and people, and they would like to be heard. One of the issues I have is, and in the most critical component is today, is if you vote for a Māori seat today, you know full well that come 2025, the local elections, you're going to have a referendum to retain the seat. So I realised that in September 2023, you voted to support a Māori seat. However, the circumstances have critically changed since then, and the referendum is now part of the process the government has insisted on. I realised that 3 days ago you had what I would say is a secret workshop on this subject, and I hope today that you're able to have a robust, open conversation and you haven't formulated a response for this meeting today. I think it's very important to look at the issues. The issues to us, my whānau would say, and they bring the following things to the table, is you do have Māori representatives at the council. Māoris represent approximately 11% of the population in the Tasman District Council. Currently on this council, you have 3 councillors who I believe identify as a Māori of Māori descent, Councillor Hill, Brent and Dan. And I think that is a very good representation. You've got 25% of the councillors give you good representation. I believe they do an excellent job to representing the Māoris and iwis around the council chambers. So this Māori Ward, my young whānau are concerned, and they feel very strongly about that if today other councillors vote for this Māori Ward, basically what you're implying is these 3 Māori representatives you currently have on your council are not representing their local Māori or iwi. And in our view, it's not the case. We think they do an excellent job, and it would damage their mana. I don't accept that they aren't doing a good job. The young whānau are politically aware, and all councillors should be. A vote today for a Māori Ward today would mean a binding referendum in the next local body elections in 2025. My whānau have a realistic viewpoint in that, and they say it's most likely you'd be unexpected to win that binding referee on Māori seats in 2025, going on past things. A loss at that stage would mean that the Māori wards would be off the agenda for many, many years in the Tasman District Council. With respect to the council and the whānau, I would like to say the council do not support a Māori Ward today, but not support that would mean that you wouldn't have a vote on it, which in my view and my whānau's view would leave the door slightly ajar for a potential Māori Ward seat and representative in the future. To vote now and support and it gets voted off at a referendum would close that door, and that's where I'd come from. Thank you.
Thank you, Maxwell. And last up, we have Shane Graham on behalf of Ngāti Rārua. Welcome, Shane.
Tēnā tātou I ngā mana I roto I te whare. Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Maxwell. Thank you, Eugene, for your kōrero. Tēnā koe Tim o tō karakia. Me tō mihi ki tō tātou kingi tūheitia. O tira ki a nā wai. Hono I te pō. E tuana I no te rona tapu. Thank you for your kind words. Well, these are interesting and challenging times, aren't they? And once again, we're back here at the table to find ourselves re-litigated, re-talking about what I thought we decided, agreed upon last time by government, who seems to have another agenda. We appreciate from the Runanga o Ngāti Rārua, although I'm here today with my own personal hat on as well, that we support Māori wards, but we don't support the referendum. The position we have is more about just ensuring the representation of Māori voices in local government, but it's about honouring some of the things that we talked about here today with our previous speakers, about honouring democracy, equity and justice, where the tyranny of the majority essentially means when two wolves, the sheep, decide who's for dinner, who wins. It's not a 51%, 41% issue here with something going bad to 49%. Because most countries, if you look back and look at the constitutional arrangements of this country, only 3 have codified constitutions. And we're talking about constitutional matters here, not talking about local government. These are some things that are handed down for us in terms of our national framework of how our constitutional arrangements have been made. We're struggling at the moment because we've been dictated by ministers with only one seat and one level of government, who are pushing through these legislations at a rapid pace, who I think Sir Geoffrey Palmer has alluded to, and thank you for those who alluded me to the document, lurching towards constitutional impropriety. And what does that mean? And he has expressed deep concern as our leading constitutional thinker around the direction of our practices constitutionally. The goalposts are changing halfway through the game. The referee is changing the rules as we go along. And instead of 80 minutes, we're giving 14 minutes to complete the task. That's not fair. That's not ticket on you or anybody throughout this whole process. He warns we've been weakened our democracy when policies are forced through without proper checks and balances, without the voice of the people being truly heard. The warning resonates with us all, especially as we contemplate your decisions today that affect the fundamental rights of Māori to be fairly represented in the councils of our land. Large ratepayers, landowners, contributions to the revenue that's generated for this council by the region surely would maintain that someone has a strategic partnership and relationship at a table which makes the broader decisions. I've said that before and I'll say it again, this country's legal framework reflects an understanding of the country's diverse social, cultural and historical makeup. The problem is not law, it's constitution that we need to go back and look at. The idea that New Zealand is a one people is often invoked to promote unity and social cohesion. However, this notion does not align with the reality of our legal system and constitutional landscape, which recognises and accommodates differences, particularly between Māori and non-Māori. It's in our constitution. It's already there in law, legally, constitutional law. So the difficulty is, how do you give evidence to that at a local government? Well, the Māori wards are one way we can do that. We can share decision making and look through and reflect in the numerous pieces of legislation, court decisions and government policies that are coming down. Māori wards are not a threat to democracy, as we've heard. They are for fulfilment of it. They ensure we have historically been underrepresented, have a guaranteed voice that shape the futures of our region to tauihu. Our partnership agreements, our tauihu strategies, we've all signed up to. But we find it difficult to get over the hump to find out how do we actually tactically, operationally put it into practice. This is one way we do that. The danger of a referendum is why we don't support it, and we're in agreement, is because it places the rights of the majority at the mercy, rights of the minority at the mercy of the majority. We must ask ourselves, is this truly democratic, or are we, as Sir Geoffrey cautioned, at risk of undermining the very principles that make our democracy strong? So for Hearts of Ngāti Rāru and the other whānau who I'm here today speaking on behalf as well, we actually just think about that, think about the legacy you wish to leave as the leaders to uphold, yes, intergenerationally, the values of equity, justice and partnership, or in a moment in decision, choose the path of least resistance, allowing the fear of change to overshadow the premise of a fair, more inclusive society. God save the King. God save the King is what I've often heard around here. Long live our Queen. Tēnā tātou.
Shane. Well, thank you. That draws us to the conclusion of the public forum. Just before I got through any declarations of interest, I'd just like to acknowledge the council's kaumātua. So Harvey, Jane, welcome. Thank you for all the work you do on our behalf and the support you provide both me personally and the council as a whole in your roles. So acknowledgements to both of you. Are there any declarations of interest? If not, there are no late items. We'll move on to the one item on the agenda, which is the decision on the Māori Ward as required under the Local Government Electoral Legislation on Māori Wards and Māori Constituencies Amendment Act 2024. Leith, Renee, welcome. And John, I'll hand over to you to introduce the report. Add anything you wish to before I open it up for questions and or debate.
Kia ora koutou. Through the chair, I will take the report as read. The only thing I will add to the report is since it was finalised, we've gotten some updated numbers from our election services provider. The cost of a referendum is now estimated between $35,000 and $55,000. Other than that, I'm available to answer any questions you may have.
Kia ora. Renee, is there anything you'd like to add? Okay, thank you. So the item is open for discussion. Obviously, if people have questions and or there's a mover and seconder or comments that people would like to make, we will proceed with the discussion. Councillor Maywing.
Well, I'm happy to move the motion as an item 3, and I'd just like to speak to it briefly to start with. And I've given this a lot of thought over the last 2 days. Because I've certainly talked to a lot of people in the community, and they had a view that is different from this. But I don't think they understand the Local Government Act and our obligations to it. And I've printed out a couple of sections here, which I think are very relevant. And one is section 4 about the Treaty of Waitangi and our obligations under the Local Government Act to that. And the other is section 10, where it talks about our obligations for cultural development in our district. So that's why I support this in particular. And I also want to just mention some projects where we have worked particularly well with iwi over the years. And I actually want to acknowledge somebody in the gallery, Barney Thomas, who I sat with 22 years ago when we first sat with Waiwak and looked at water augmentation. And that was a true partnership. And Barney didn't mince any words at those meetings over those years. And he actually helped us hugely in getting that project over the line. So I'd like to thank you for that, Barney. We certainly had some blunt words at times, but it worked well and we got it over the line. And the dam actually sits on iwi land now. which it didn't when we first had those discussions. The other areas where I think where we've worked particularly well with iwi over the last few years has been the future development strategy and also on plan changes. Those have also helped because we had iwi involvement and advice. And the one other area is a committee that I chair that is jointly with Nelson City, and that's the Nelson Regional Sewerage Business Unit, where we have a member on that committee who is a Māori Ward councillor from Nelson City. And during that time, his perspective on our decision-making has assisted us greatly. So that it demonstrates to me we're having a Māori member on council will assist us in our decision-making going forward. And I don't think it's perfect having a Māori Ward, because if you want to be on the Māori roll and you're in Richmond and you're all going to vote in the Māori Ward, you only get one vote for one councillor. Whereas if you're on the general roll, you get 4 and you get the vote for the mayor as well. So you actually get less of a say as a member on the Māori roll than you would if you're on the general roll. And I see that as a disadvantage, but I see it helping us in our obligations that we have under the Local Government Act. Hence, that's why I've moved this motion and I'm happy to support it. And I'd urge my fellow councillors to support it as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mailing. Before I move on, is there a seconder? Councillor Hill. Thank you. So the motion is moved and seconded. Firstly, are there any questions? Feel free to ask questions. Also, if you have a perspective you'd like to put across, by all means do that as well. I just think it is important to remember, well, this is a very, I guess, important day, and clearly that's reflected by the number of people who are attending to, I guess, see the outcome. It's also only the start of a process. In some ways, this is the smallest part. Not necessarily the least important, but certainly perhaps less important than a decision that's going to be made approximately 12 months down the track. But how we start the debate and how it's undertaken is probably as important as the decision itself. So, I mean, that approach, which I think this council has consistently done with some other challenging decisions about constructive kōrero, listening to different perspectives and ultimately making decisions, I do hope that that continues through the 12 months and into the substantive discussion. And in some ways, that's been reflected over the last 7 days for those who may have been observing some or part of the Tūranga Waiwai experience and that call for unity. And right at the moment, it does seem kind of further away than perhaps it did 12 months ago. But I think everyone seems to acknowledge from both sides of the political spectrum, and those with some very different views politically, that Kingi Tuhatia's lasting legacy will be that call for kitahitanga. And ultimately, hopefully over the next 12 months, we can have the debate, we can have the discussion, we can understand the different perspectives and views that people have, but we can do it in a way that actually doesn't create more division. Other comments, feedback? Don't feel as though you have to. It's not compulsory, so I'm not going to make everyone, put their 2 cents worth in. But if you wish to, by all means, do so. I'll start with Councillor McKenzie and followed by Councillor Gilchrist.
Thank you very much through you, Mr. Mayor, and good points you've just made. I would just like to say a few things. But I'd like to start off by acknowledging all the people who have emailed me on this particular issue. None of you have received a reply, but you can take this as my reply to your email. I want to indicate that today I will be supporting the decision to continue with our prior decision to establish a Māori Ward. As annoying as it is that we're going to have to incur those central government mandated costs to hold a referendum. For me, actually, the decision is quite straightforward. Yes, it contributes to meeting our partnership obligations under the treaty, but also, I'm a pragmatic person, and I believe that governance bodies need to make the best decisions that they can. And the best decisions are actually made if everybody understands the full context to those decisions. And the way that you gain that full context is actually having a good representation of views and ways of thinking to achieve that. And so, you know, I think that this decision will help to support good governance actually for TDC and the district, and all the ratepayers will benefit from that. So I think it's a reasonably straightforward decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McKenzie. Councillor Shellcrest.
Yeah, thank you. Obviously, the word brave I really find very interesting in the room today. It's obviously a scary place to be for someone like myself, new into the space, but I think this is a real opportunity for someone that may not get into the space to have a look around and have another set of eyes and set of ears. I think it's going to be really good for the decision making that we have to do every time we're in these rooms, in this room. So I'm definitely going to support it, and I'm sure there's some amazing candidates out there, and I've actually met a few in my lots of people out there in the district that would take that role on, and that's really reassuring. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kinnemont.
Thank you, through the chair. I've got a question for our team here. The Māori Ward is going to represent all iwi in Tasman area, no matter whether they're on the Māori roll or not.
Through the chair, the oath that is taken by an elected representative in a Māori ward is exactly the same as the oath taken by a regular ward councillor, and that is to represent the district as a whole.
So I'm not sure if that's entirely the question, but I think the key point to make is it's not an iwi-based ward, it is a Māori-based ward, and probably the majority of people on the Māori roll don't necessarily affiliate to any of the 8 iwi in Te Tauihu. They may well be Māori from other parts, but it's the Māori roll that determines whether or not you can vote in the Māori ward, not your affiliation to the iwi.
So if you're an iwi person not on the Māori roll, you can't vote for that ward.
Correct. You have to make the choice to be on the Māori roll, regardless of your iwi affiliation or not, in order to vote in the Māori ward. Yeah, correct.
I'd also like to thank you for clarifying that, everybody. I'd also like to point out that iwi are already intertwined with our day-to-day basis of the way we make our decisions. Now, I could start at the top where we have the 8 iwi chairs and the 3 mayors. They are charged to give effect to the principles of the Treaty of Waitangi. I might not have the right words here, but you get the impression. And provide governance and direction from that group and iwi participation. We also around the table have people on standing committees representing iwi. We also have iwi discussing with our staff on public submissions. And now we also have iwi actively participating in our workshops. So that's 4 areas where iwi have input into the decisions of what we do on a day-to-day basis. Now, please, I hope this doesn't get me too offside with my friends in the table here, but by providing a ward, I don't see how it will provide any more benefits to us making a better decision-making for the whole of our community. So for that reason, and another reason, I'll be voting to rescind it. I've also gone out through my community, my ward. I've been to people in Mapua, Tasman, Motueka, and also recently to Brightwater. And the overwhelming comments back from them is that they don't want to see a Māori ward. So I'm voting in line with the information that my ratepayers, the people that I've spoke to, in line with their comments.
Thank you. Councillor Butler, then Councillor Walker. It's Stewie's doing it. It's his fault if you feel. That's all right. Just speaking later in a bit actually is more of an advantage than you might think. Councillor Butler.
I was waiting for you to. Okay, kia ora. Yeah, I'm very pleased to support this resolution. I don't have any reason to change my previous vote on this. To me, this is all about partnership and honouring the treaty. I really value the partnership in an area which I'm particularly interested in, and that is in the land and freshwater plan change. And I can experience already how partnership with iwi is actually bringing that plan change to a really good conclusion that embodies the values of Māori and all of us. So, and particularly as regards the Waikato-Pupu Springs, I think our partnership with that is extremely important and valuable, and that would not be valued if this was rescinded. As regards the comments that this may be an undemocratic process, I think that you only need to open the door on New Zealand's colonial history to see that it is a redress. Maybe it's not perfect, but it is a redress to that profoundly undemocratic history so far. So I'm going to support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Butler. Councillor Walker, then Councillor Hill.
Thank you, through me. I'm quite happy for Councillor Hill to go first if she'd like. Oh, good. Kia ora. Kia ora. Firstly, as you would all know, I am not anti-Māori. I was born in the far north. I was schooled. I had friends I lived with, and I shared the first part of my life, the hikui, the journey I was on with Māori people. When we started this conversation, it was an unanimous vote around this table. However, my kōrero then was, we needed to take our entire community on the hikui, this journey with us. We didn't back then. Our community's voice was not present. However, we have started the process of a representation review, which has enabled some voices to be heard. The one person, one vote, we are one. That's the cloak that I wear. Our role is to be part of weaving a strong, resilient community for all. We can each put our hat in the ring when it comes to local elections. Through democracy, we are all entitled to stand. We are entitled to vote, regardless of our education, our skills, our beliefs, or even our achievements. We all use the same services here in our district. The core business of Tasman District Council, we as a council are mandated to do lots of things. We all, every one of us in this room, share a similar fresh water. We drink the same water. Where my wharipaku empties out into is the same water treatment plant as everybody else within Mairupu, the group that I live within. We drive on the same roads. Our recreational facilities and libraries are open to everyone inclusive, except when COVID came along. None of our services are separated by our ethnicity. So I don't really get why one ethnicity group needs to have a separate representation around the table when everyone else has to walk through the same kind of doors. We put our name forward, we get nominated, we stand, we get elected if our community wants us to be through a vote that everybody's entitled to do. And as already has been said today, and I did my kōrero earlier, sorry, I wrote my notes prior for this kōrero. In this current term, many voices are articulated here. We currently do have, as been said, 3 councillors who whakapapa 2 different iwis. We have iwi representatives. Some of them are seconded onto our committees, like the Operations Committee. We have representation on the NRSBU, as Councillor Mailings pointed out. We also have one on the Nelson Tasman Regional Land Business Unit. And if there was more capacity, we know that other committees would have representation on them too. Our iwi chairs, as has been said, meet with our senior leadership, with the Mayor and our CE. And those conversations are filtered down into this room and into us as councillors. Iwi are allowed around our tables. You are attending our workshops. Your views, your knowledge, your beliefs, your culture are being acknowledged. Tasman District Council no longer operates solely under a Western science. We've now moved. We now have Western science. We now have a policy framework. We have regulatory framework. And we also are looking through a Te Ao Māori perspective because you're at the table. All pillars, fields are being woven into our decision-making currently. And as a councillor, we sign an oath to represent our district for all of those who reside here. We don't just look after one ethnical group or just our ward. We are elected as councillors for a district. Today I sit here and I have this concern really around the capacity that our iwi have. We are regularly told you have limited capacity. We have waited and waited for responses from you with regards to whether the Māori Ward, when it got put back out there by central government, should or should not be here. I understand your capacity meant that for some you didn't get back to us. I would have appreciated hearing your viewpoint prior to being sat in the seat, which is not a comfy seat, I might add, today. We have a democratic brief process which needs to be upheld for the future of all of our community. We need to continue to take all of our community on this journey with us. So for me, I will rescind my vote that I put in previously based on what I've shared.
Thank you, Councillor Hill.
Tēnā koutou katoa, raurangatira mā, tēnā koutou, ngā mihi aroha kia koutou. Some pretty painful moments to have to sit through here, and I feel for you with that. And I guess the conversation that's happened so far here, I don't know, it's hard to know where to start, isn't it, in a way, but I guess it's for people around this table and the people who have been around this table for the last, I don't know, decades. They'll know in their hearts how well I've been able to represent iwi, Māori, tangata whenua here. And it's such a strange notion, isn't it, when it's largely been a non-Māori populated environment in here for how long? I think there was a Mātawaka woman from Motueka perhaps elected here, I'm not sure, quite a long time ago. But I think before I was elected on, I don't know that there'd been any other Māori elected in the room. So it's such a strange thing. I've got notes here and I've just, thought I'd read them and, try and say a bit, coherent. But, the idea that it's so strange to me that the idea that when there's been such a demographic represented in here, particularly farmers, I must say, all good, great to have farmers here, but we don't just want farmers here. Great to have landowners, business owners, or, business owners here. And that's who largely has been here. It's been the domain of non-Māori, certainly, men, middle-aged to older usually. Nothing wrong with them. Nothing wrong with that. But it's more that that's all that's been here for decades. And the odd farmer got in quite young. So it's just strange, doesn't it, to hear? So the idea of having one Māori person elected here is so confronting to people. And I just know that you'll know in your bones whether you feel like you're able to represent Māori, Joe Māori worldview, which isn't an opinion. So back to my notes, and it is an auspicious day really to be having our second crack at this vote, given what's happening up at Tūranga Waiwai. And there is a direct correlation between the formation of the Kingitanga movement and what we're doing here today. A whole lot of things off that, but actually there's a direct line you can make to this. And let that not be lost on any of us. And I think I'm yelling, I don't need to put a mic, but it's a lot to feel, isn't it? And our particular form of democracy in New Zealand is highly valued. And but it doesn't generate equity. And the flood of emails we got from folk, I did write back to a few just asking if they were in the Tasman district, and it was good to hear the odd person was, because there was no mention of Tasman in it, so I thought maybe it's been generated from somewhere else. But one of the concerns, or one of the comments that was made in the email was that, well, look at Parliament now. There were plenty of women there, plenty of Māori, plenty of people from other ethnicities, other cultures there. But that's going to come about through a proactive generation of that through placement on the lists. The Labour Party particularly and the Green Party have been very careful and deliberate about where they've placed people on the list, so that would shift the representation of women, Māori, others, some of those folk that get an alphabet letter attributed to them. And that's how come we have the parliament we have today, through a proactive movement to generate that. Because these old systems are just so difficult to change. Even with good intent, they just don't shift on their own. And at the heart of this is power and control and authority, which is what decision-making is about. And it's not given up easily, whether consciously or not. And that's what that is at the heart of this. The other thing the email spoke about too was this idea of one vote, one person, one vote. And I don't know who did this great job of getting a hold of that campaign of convincing people if there's a Māori ward, somehow Māori are going to get more votes than other people. It's just simply not true. And it's been explained here already. So, if you're on the Māori roll, if you 3 months out from the election, if you're on the Māori roll, you're stuck with that and you get to vote in the Māori ward, you don't get to change in that 3-month period, and you'll get one vote and a vote for mayor. Richmond, people in Richmond with their sins get to choose 4 councillors and a mayor. I'll get 5 votes. So it's just strange how these things that just simply aren't true get a grip, and get spread. So, and I think to the point about the point, the business about how we're working with iwi and iwi Māori, mana whenua, and all the ways that we are, it is essential, and we're required to do that by legislation. It's taken a long time to get here from council side. A lot of work from all of you over there, for many, many, many decades to get where we are. And that's one aspect, but that doesn't deliver people here to the decision-making table. And, you know, the reality is, one of the realities is that people who aren't Māori don't tend to vote for Māori people. And there have been conscious decisions nationally for people to stand in local government elections who are incredibly experienced, incredibly good governors, and they just will never get a look in. But like the rural ward, for areas that have a rural ward, let's let Richmond decide on whether rural wards get to exist or not. Won't have a hope. So there's a lot in this. And to note, Eugene, your comments at the beginning, that is a shameful process to have to be participating in. Human Rights Commission has said this is a discriminatory process. The binding poll. Waitaki Tribunal reports there that, you know, perhaps we've read that. Discriminatory business going on here. But if we don't have a Māori ward, you know, I wasn't voted on here particularly because I'm Māori. Probably because Shane Graham's dying to say a couple of things about why I might have got voted on. But, you know, for some people might have thought, yes, it's important that Māori voice is here. But there's other reasons, primarily, probably why I got voted on here. So I'm not sure what people are afraid of, really. And just to be clear, that person will take the same oath as all of us and represent everybody in the district. It won't cost ratepayers more because the same pool will exist. People will just get paid a little bit less. So I'll certainly be voting again. I'll be affirming our decision to have a Māori ward, and I just think that whatever any of us can do to help people understand the things that just simply aren't true around this matter, that we'll go about doing that in the between now and October next year. Good.
Thank you. Any further speakers? So I wasn't. Do you want to say something? Oh, sure.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, if I may. First, I have a couple of questions and then I'll make a few comments if I may. So firstly, Leith, just in relation to the cost of the poll, you gave us a figure of between 35 and 55. I understand that the other two councils at the top of the south have said around 60. One, I'm just wondering why there's such a variation in their cost, and how is it so uncertain?
Through the chair, I believe that the other councils have also indicated that their costs will come down to the same. We all use the same at the moment election provider, and we've just received updated costings from them, estimates from them.
Thank you. And the second question just relates to this process. Normally for us, because of our differentiation between the population and wards, we get referred to the Local Government Commission at the end of this process, and that's most likely to happen this time. But the Local Government Commission doesn't have any power over the Māori Ward's position. That's entirely ours. I just want to clarify that before I speak, if I may.
Through the chair, look, that's my understanding, but I have to go away and check that for you.
Thank you. So I guess there's a degree of frustration for us all around this table today around this, because this has been placed on us by local central government after a change at the election. And one of the interesting things is that the central government election, of all the major parties, none of them had this in their manifesto that they would bring in a poll post-election. So that is frustrating that we made a decision in 23 believing that the polls had gone, and now we're back to considering Māori wards and the requirement to have polls, which is, as someone alluded to, is the majority voting for the minority. And I think that's frustrating for us all around this table and the community. So I just want to talk about iwi across the top of the largest top of the South Island. I've done a little research into this, and it looks like our two near neighbours have decided to have Māori wards. We have some family interest in Kaikoura, so I actually did a review of a number of councils, and I'll start with Kaikoura around the position they have taken around this. So I rang Craig, the mayor, and spoke to them, and bear in mind that they have an election at large. So Craig said they initially put it out for a consultation. Iwi come to them and said, look, we don't really want a separate Māori ward. We'd sooner work with you. So they put it out for further consultation and without a Māori ward, and they received no submissions about that. Just that they would work with iwi in a cooperative manner. And then Westland, Greymouth and Buller all had similar situations, put out for submissions. And in Greymouth's case, they said the iwi are working really well, and we don't see a need for a ward. So they put it out for submission again, and no submissions received on the final poll. So it's quite different here, where we've received a lot of submissions around this both through emails and for other processes. I think the thing that really sort of puts me in the position that I am now is it is really around, we've heard lots of talk around rights and stuff like that, but this is all about representation. And that's why we have wards for elections in this council, because we have rural and provincial areas. We heard about people saying have a farmers ward, well, effectively the Murchison Lakes, and maybe the Waimea Moochbury ward, it's in part of farmers wards. How do you get farmers around this table? By having wards. It's how will you get Māori around this? And they all have a challenging job to represent 8 or 9 iwi across the top of the South in that ward, as I do, representing a vast range of people in the Lakes Murchison ward. And in fact, it's the same in every ward. So I believe that the important thing is around representation, and to guarantee representation for Māori, iwi, call it what you like, we need to have wards. There's very little chance that the Local Government Commission will change us from having wards to at large or any variation of that. They will treat the boundaries, but we'll be with wards for some considerable time to come, as will many councils around the country. Wards are not just for geographical, they could be, as people have alluded to, for rural, and they have them for other things as well in some councils around the country. So for me, frustrating as it is that we're back here considering this, I am going to support the resolution to have a Māori ward.
Thanks, Stuart. Councillor Graney.
Yeah. Apologies for the deep voice, recovering from a cold. I will be supporting the resolution. I think it's important that I just have a few words just to express my thoughts. I think at the heart of all of this is something that is unique to New Zealand, which is its constitutional framework. And it's often forgotten in arguments about, one people, one vote, all the rest of it, segregation, blah, blah, blah. We have a constitutional document. It's a founding document of this country, which recognised there were two peoples and that we're constitutionally a bicultural country. So in that spirit, this seems to be blown out of all proportion. We've already heard some very compelling arguments about the mechanics of it all, that it's still one vote and still the person has to represent the whole district. It's about making sure that we have voices around the table. And I heard today some arguments about we've already got 3 Māori voices around the table. This ensures that we at least have one, because it's no guarantee those people are ever returned. So this ensures that we're at least getting one voice around the table. This is no different to central government, which has 4 seats guaranteed in government to ensure that the voice is there. So I don't think this is scary or should be in any way feared. It's representation. I have a Welsh background, and in Wales, the Welsh have gone through the same experience that the Māori have here. Welsh was a banned language. My mother was caned for speaking Welsh at school, and it was beaten out of people. And in the 70s, they had a resurgence of the Welsh language, and that helped. Wales. It's an attraction actually to go to Wales and to hear the language and to see the culture, which was unfortunately dying. So I think it's a really strong thing. We should be celebrating it, not being fearful of it. And so this is also going to referendum as well. I've always been a supporter of referendum. I think the community, hopefully at their heart, will see that this is a good thing and will support it. But I've never been afraid of referendums. I've called them for the Waimea Dam, and unfortunately some people didn't support them then, but maybe they'll support them today. So I just want to say those words, and I hope that the community will get in behind this as well and support what we should be doing as a country, which is raising the voice of those people in this country who, for a long time, were not heard. And governments redress that through multiple channels, and this is one of them. So, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Greening. Right. So, if there's no one else, before I come back to Kit and check if he wants to write a reply, I wasn't going to say much, but I kind of think I will now. I think that it's really interesting, isn't it? As a farmer, and farmers have been mentioned a fair bit, I always know when someone's about to criticise me because they go, I've got relations who are farmers. I'm married to a farmer. Like, I love farmers, and then they stick the knife in. And it's like, oh yeah. And I guess we've kind of heard that a bit today. It's real easy to associate yourself with something before you have a crack at it. Going on the past is another thing that's come up. If we were going on the past for our representation reviews, only men who owned land would be voting for anything ever. So if we constantly look back at the past and that sets our benchmark, we're condemned to just stick with something that we all intuitively know probably isn't the right thing to do. One person, one vote. That's a classic, isn't it? I love that. There is virtually nothing in this country that's one person, one vote. I mean, you vote in the national elections, you get 2 votes. There's the list system, so that's not exactly, one person, one vote. If you happen to own property in every region of the country, you get to vote in all the local elections. So you might get 20 votes if you've got enough property in all the different places. There are very few things that strictly stick to that philosophical thing that's thrown around willy-nilly, one person, one vote. So there's been a lot said again, the technicalities, the kind of, I don't know, the law, the Constitution. And even today in the debate, it is pretty clear that the next 12 months and the referendum itself and the election potentially is going to be really challenging and divisive. And I find that actually really sad. My greatest thing about my feeling about today, and I've been between optimism and pessimism and anger and enthusiasm, and I kind of parked, I guess 2 days ago, I was in the pessimistic kind of, and I have been accused of being slightly cynical, haven't been here a while. That's probably a fair characteristic, I'd have to say. I was going to share with this anecdote, and I wasn't going to, I decided should I or shouldn't I, but I'm going to, because the other thing that's been brought up today, and by a couple of people with from different perspectives, is the time and the age thing. So the time thing was brought up, I think, by Maxwell Clark, and he said correctly that the way the law is currently written, if we go to a referendum on 2025, and if that referendum is lost, the next likely date for a Māori ward to be considered is 2031 and to be implemented is 2034. If you think about that, and you think that in the context of a generation of kids who are coming through, whether it's kindergarten, whether it's through a kura kaupapa, whether it's through intermediate at the moment, some of those kids will have voted twice. So they will have got to the age to vote, they will have voted twice. before there'll even be a reconsideration. And I guess my pick is, having spent a bit of time in kindergartens and schools and coach young people, that's a very different generation of people coming through the system. And to not have the option to reconsider it or potentially vote in that system until that length of time, I think is sad. And that's just part of the way that this legislation currently works. So anecdote I want to share, and bear with me because you may think I'm going way off track, but I trust me, I'll come back to the point at the end. I mean, I've been really fortunate to be coaching a junior rugby side over the last 3 or 4 months. The great thing about coaching is, while you think you're there to teach, you actually learn at least as much as you teach, and sometimes more. This is an awesome group of young men. It happened to be young men, could have included some young girls, happened not to be this time around. 12 and 13 years old, from all over the kind of Nelson part of the region. So Richmond, Waimea, out into Nelson, different rugby clubs, different backgrounds, real interesting mix of kids. When we made the selection, picking 20, started with 80 at a kind of school session, went through a trial, had to pick 20, came down, usual story, first 10 are easy, second 5 are pretty tough, and the last 5 you could throw a blanket over 20 other kids. We're 2 identical twins. 100% identical, like even at the end of the whole 6, well, I still couldn't tell them apart. They were both pretty good. One was slightly better than the other. So there's 4 of us in the selection coaching thing, and we were like, what do we do? Like, do we select identical twins? Like, if we pick one and not the other, like, how's that going to pan out? On the other hand, if we pick one and we don't think he's quite as good as another kid, he misses out. That's not ideal, either. So in the end, after quite a lot of debate, we picked one and not the other. Yeah, I know. Oh, could have gone pear-shaped. But first training turns up, both twins turn up, clearly, mum drops them off. One who was not picked comes up with the coach and goes, excuse me, what do I have to do to get in this team? Now we could have said, or the coach that asked could have said, sorry, we've picked a 20. You just miss out this time, better late next time. But he didn't. He said, well, mate, if you want to turn up at training and run around and have a go, there's a possibility someone will get injured down the track. You might learn something while you're here. Come along, have a go. So he did. Team embraced him, got around him, hugely positive. Him himself just had that positive attitude, just get in there, give it a go, take the risk. Someone did get injured. He made the 20, came to the tournament. On the Wednesday night, we have a bit of a feed. Everyone comes together, family, friends, whānau, all the kids sit around, put out some platters. 2 things happened which were unusual. Firstly, one of these kids just put his hand up and said, I'll do the karakia. Banged it out. Everyone's just like, oh, sweet. How cool was that? And then this boy says, do you mind if I say a few words? I'm going to read his whole speech. But even thinking about it, people were crying by the time he finished, including, well, I was probably didn't cry. Maybe a little bit of moisture. But I'll just read you one line out of what he said. He said to the coaches, thank you very much for your patience and wisdom in helping us develop not only our footy skills, but our character and our passion for the game. Thank you for making me feel included and valued. And it's those last 2 words I think are crucially important. That team didn't win the tournament, but in every other way, it is the most successful team I have ever coached. One young man's experience and being valued and included had such a big impact on the whole team, their family, their supporters. And what it showed me is, if you decide to include a minority, in this case, one individual, it can have a positive impact on everybody else. And in every other aspect of life, when you make a choice to do something for someone else, to provide someone else an opportunity, even if there is a degree of self-sacrifice, in many ways, more if there's a degree of self-sacrifice in what you do, that's a good thing. That's applauded. That is something that everyone goes, that was a good decision. You gave someone else the opportunity. I know this debate's going to be divisive. I know there's going to be all sorts of technicalities talked about and the pluses and the minuses and the representation and the numbers, but it's actually very bloody simple. Sometimes you just give someone else an opportunity, make them feel valued, and actually everyone's going to benefit. So with that, sorry for the length of that dissertation, but would you like to write a reply, Councillor Mailing?
Not after that.
Okay. So I will put the resolution. All in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Would you like your votes recorded? So if you'd like to record the 2 votes against, thank you. So with that, thank you. I will draw the meeting to a close with the closing karakia. Kia hiki te korero, kia pātia, kia mama te manawa o te tangata, kia e ki te ara mō tātou ko ore nei, ko rongo, ko runga, kia tina, hui e, tai kia. Thank you.